The message came from deep space at 3 in the morning. Jake Morrison was drinking his 4th cup of coffee in the command center of the Earth. Ship Horizon's Edge when the computer started beeping. The sound was different from the usual signals they got from other human ships or space stations. "Sir, we're getting something strange," said Captain Lisa Burton. She was sitting at the main control desk, her fingers moving quickly over the buttons. "This isn't from Earth or any of our colonies." Jake walked over to look at her screen. Numbers and symbols filled the display, but they weren't in any human language. The ship's computer was trying to understand what the message meant, but it was taking time. "How far away did this come from?" Jake asked. "About 12 light years, sir." "That puts it somewhere near the Kepler system." Lisa pressed more buttons. "The computer says it's not a natural signal. Someone made this on purpose." Jake felt his heart beat faster. Humans had been traveling to other star systems for only 2 years now. They had found empty planets and dead rocks, but no other life. No other people. If this message was real, it would be the first time humans had ever heard from aliens. "Get me the translation program," he said. "Wake up Dr. Collins. She'll want to see this." 20 minutes later, Emma Collins rushed into the command center. Her hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were bright with excitement. She was the ship's expert on alien life, even though they had never found any before. "What do we have?" she asked, looking at the screens. "Listen to this," Lisa said. She pressed a button, and a voice came from the speakers. It sounded sad and tired, but the words were now in English thanks to the computer. "This message goes to any people who can fight. Our worlds are dying. Something terrible is eating our planets and killing our people. We've tried to stop them, but we are not strong enough. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We will share our knowledge and our resources with anyone who can save us." The voice stopped, and the command center went quiet. Jake, Lisa, and Emma looked at each other. "How many people died?" Emma asked quietly. Lisa checked her screen. "The message includes numbers. They say 43 billion people have been killed across 7 different worlds." Jake felt cold. 43 billion was more than 5 times the population of Earth. "What's killing them?" "They call it the Void Swarm," Lisa said, reading from her screen. The computer translated some data files that came with the message. "These things look like giant metal bugs, but they're alive somehow. They land on planets and eat everything." Emma was reading another screen. "According to this, the aliens who sent the message are called Zephyrians. They're some kind of crystal people who live on planets with very light gravity and thin air." "Crystal people?" Jake asked. That's what the translation says. They're made of living crystal that can think and talk. They've been fighting these Void Swarm creatures for 3 years, but they keep losing. Jake walked around the room, thinking hard. Earth had built its first real space fleet only 5 years ago. It had 12 big ships like the Horizon's Edge and about 50 smaller ones. It wasn't much compared to what these aliens seemed to have. "What makes them think we can help?" he asked. "We just started traveling in space. They probably have better weapons and more ships than us." Lisa pulled up another file. "Sir, you need to see this. Zephyrians have some kind of database about different types of planets. They put Earth in a special category." "What category?" "They call it a Class 12 death world." Emma looked up from her screen. "Death world. What does that mean?" "According to their files, it means a planet so dangerous that most life forms can't survive on it. They list things like poisonous air, crushing gravity, deadly weather, and dangerous animals. They say only the toughest creatures can live on a death world." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Poisonous air. They mean oxygen?" "Looks like it." "Most aliens breathe different gases. To them, oxygen is like poison. They also say our gravity is about 5 times stronger than what most aliens are used to." Emma was reading more files. "This is incredible. They have information about thousands of different planets and species. But look at this. Earth is the only planet they know of where smart people developed. All the other death worlds just have animals." "So we're the only intelligent species that comes from a dangerous planet?" Jake asked. "As far as they know, yes. Get this, they think we're myths. Most aliens believe that nothing's smart enough to build spaceships could survive on a death world." Jake started to understand. "So when they get our message, they'll be surprised that we exist?" "More than surprised," Lisa said. According to these files, most aliens are afraid of Deathworlds. They think anything that comes from a place like Earth would be too dangerous to meet. Jake thought about his home planet. Earth had earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, fires, ice ages, and thousands of animals that could kill a human. People had been fighting to survive on Earth for millions of years. Maybe that would be useful now. How long would it take us to reach them? He asked. Lisa worked with the navigation computer. About 6 days using our fastest jump drive. And how long since they sent this message? The signal has been traveling. For 2 weeks to reach us? Jake made his decision. Send a message back. Tell them that Earth is coming to help. Then call all our ships back to the fleet. We're going to see what Deathworlders can do in a real fight? Sir, Emma said, we don't know anything about fighting aliens. We don't even know what these void swarm creatures look like up close. Maybe that's good, Jake said. We'll think of something they don't expect. Lisa started typing the return message. What should I tell them about us? Jake watched the stars through the big window at the front of the command center. Somewhere out there, crystal people were dying while metal monsters ate their worlds. Earth had never been asked to help aliens before, but humans had always been good at fighting impossible battles. Tell them we're from the planet they call a death world, he said. Tell them we've been fighting to survive our whole lives, and now we're coming to fight for them. 2 hours later, 12 Earth ships were jumping through space toward the Kepler system. None of the humans knew what they would find when they got there. But they knew one thing for sure. If these void swarm creatures thought the galaxy was helpless, they had never met humans before, and humans had never met a fight they wouldn't take on. Jake sat in his command chair and smiled. The aliens were about to learn why Earth was called a death world, and why the people who came from it were still alive after millions of years of practice. The hunt was about to begin. The human fleet came out of jump space near a planet that was dying. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched through the big window as massive. Black shapes moved across the surface of the alien world below. Each shape was as big as a city, and they were eating everything they touched. My God, whispered Dr. Emma Collins. She was looking at her screen, trying to count how many of the giant creatures were down there. There must be hundreds of them around the planet. Broken pieces of alien ships floated in space. Some were still burning. Others had been cut in half or crushed into scrap metal. The few alien ships that were still working looked very small compared to the monsters on the planet. Sir, we're getting a signal, said Captain Lisa Burton. It's weak, but the translation computer is working on it. Jake nodded, put it through. The voice that came from the speakers sounded tired and scared. Unknown ships, please stay away. This system is lost. What? The void swarm has taken our world. Save yourselves. Commander Rick Hayes, who was in charge of talking to aliens, stepped forward. This is Commander Hayes of the Earth ship Horizon's Edge. We received your message asking for help. We're here to fight. There was a long silence. Then the alien voice came back, but now it sounded confused. Earth ship. You said Earth? That's right. We're from the planet your people call a Class 12 death world. Another long silence. Different voice, stronger, but still scared, came through the speakers. This cannot be real. The death world Terra is a legend. No intelligent life can exist on such a world. Emma stepped up to the communication panel. We're real and we're here. What do you need us to do? I am Commander Veltaire of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, the alien voice said. If you are truly from the forbidden world, then perhaps there is hope. The main screen in front of them lit up, and suddenly they were looking at an alien. Commander Veltar looked like a person made of living blue crystal. His body was tall and thin, and light seemed to shine from inside him. But the light was weak, and Jake could see that the alien was hurt. Your appearance is disturbing, Veltar said, looking at the humans. You are so solid, so dense, and you breathe the poison gas that kills most life. Oxygen isn't poison to us, Emma said gently. It's what keeps us alive. Yes, that is what makes you creatures of the death world. You live in conditions that would kill us in minutes. Veltar's crystal body flickered. But perhaps that is what we need now. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the battle around the planet. Tell us about these void swarm creatures. What are we fighting? They are not truly alive, but they are not machines either. They think as one mind, but each body can act alone. They eat planets and turn the material into more of themselves. Our weapons hurt them, but they heal too quickly. They learn from every attack and become stronger. Lieutenant Ben Parker, the weapons expert, was studying his screens. Sir, I'm picking up some interesting patterns in how these things move. They're not fighting like predators. Jake looked at him. What do you mean? Watch this, Ben said. Pointing to his screen, see how they pull back when they take damage? A real predator would press the attack when it smells blood. These things retreat to heal. Emma was looking at video feeds from the planet's surface. They move like herd animals, always staying together, always watching for threats from outside their group. Commander Hayes was studying the space battle. Alien ships are fighting defensively too. They're trying to protect their planet instead of hunting down the enemy. Jake started to understand. They're all prey species. Eltar's crystal face showed confusion. Prey species. I do not understand this term. On our world, there are hunters and there are hunted, Jake explained. Animals that hunt other animals for food and animals that run away or hide. Your people evolved from animals that were hunted. And you evolved from the hunters, Veltar said quietly. This explains much about your species' reputation. Dr. Collins pulled up files on her computer. Commander Veltar, can you show us recordings of how these void swarm creatures fight? The main screen changed to show a battle from a few days ago. Zephyrian ships were attacking one of the giant monsters with energy beams. The creature's skin changed color where the beams hit, and after a few minutes, the beams stopped working entirely.
Ow.
They adapt to our weapons, Veltar explained. By the end of each battle, nothing we have can hurt them. Ben Parker was taking notes. But they're only adapting to energy weapons. What about physical attacks? Physical attacks? You mean ... hitting them with solid objects? Exactly. Bullets, missiles, ramming attacks, things that work by smashing into the target instead of burning it. Veltar looked confused. But such weapons are primitive. Why would an advanced species use crude metal projectiles? Jake smiled. Because sometimes the old ways work best. How fast can you get us down to the planet? You wish to land on the surface? That is suicide. The void swarm will destroy you. Maybe, Jake said. But we've been fighting on dangerous worlds our whole lives. Let us try something your people have never seen before. 30 minutes later, human dropships were falling toward the planet like meteors. The void swarm creatures on the surface turned their attention upward, firing streams of acid and energy beams at the incoming ships. Evasive maneuvers ordered Major Tony Adams over the radio.
What?
Remember, these things have never fought anyone who fights back for fun. The human ships dodged and weaved through the enemy fire. Some took hits, but they kept flying. On a death world, you learn to take damage and keep moving. Staff Sergeant Kate Williams was in the first ship to land. As soon as the doors opened, her soldiers rushed out with weapons that hadn't been seen in space combat for 100 years. Assault rifles, rocket launchers, and grenades. The nearest void swarm creature turned toward them. It was as big as a building with black metal skin that could adapt to any energy weapon. But it had never seen a rocket-propelled grenade before. The explosion knocked the creature backward. Green liquid sprayed from the wound, and for the first time in the battle, a void swarm creature made a sound that might have been pain. Target is hurt but not down, Kate radioed to her team. Remember, we're not trying to kill it with one shot. We're trying to kill it with 1,000 cuts. More human soldiers spread out around the creature. They moved like a wolf pack, each soldier covering the others, all of them working toward the same goal. The creature tried to adapt to their weapons, but there were too many different types attacking from too many directions. Back in space, Commander Hayes was leading the ship attack. All vessels, remember the plan. We're not trying to destroy them quickly. We're trying to confuse them. The human ships attacked in patterns that made no sense to the void swarm. They would charge straight at a creature, then suddenly break away at the last second. They would fire all their weapons at once. then go completely silent. They would ram their ships into the enemy, causing damage to themselves just to cause more damage to the target. The humans fight without regard for their own safety, Veltar observed to his bridge crew. They sacrifice their own ships to hurt the enemy. It's not sacrifice, Emma said over the communication channel. It's calculated risk. We know how much damage we can take and still keep fighting. On the planet, the battle was turning. The Void Swarm creatures were still trying to adapt to human weapons, but humans kept changing their tactics. When bullets stopped working, they switched to explosives. When explosives stopped working, they used fire. When fire stopped working, they used acid. The key is not giving them time to figure us out, Kate explained to a group of Zephyrian soldiers who had joined the fight. We hit them with something new every few minutes. But the real surprise came when the Void Swarm tried their oldest trick. When a creature was badly hurt, it would call for help from the others. On any other world, the defending species would either run away or form a defensive line. Humans did something different. They followed the hurt creature back to its friends. All units, we have multiple targets converging on our position, Major Adams announced. Perfect, and we can kill them all at once. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as human soldiers ran toward danger instead of away from it. This was something their prey species' minds could barely understand. In 6 hours, the immediate threat to the Zephyrian homeworld was over. The Void Swarm creatures were either dead or retreating into deep space. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. Commander, Veltar, he said, we need to talk. This was just one planet. How many worlds are these things attacking? The crystal alien's light flickered weakly. 17 systems. Admiral Morrison. And the main force hasn't even arrived yet. Jake looked out at the stars and smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had just found worthy prey. And we better get started teaching the galaxy how Deathworlders really fight. The biggest Void Swarm creature was the size of a mountain. It sat in the middle of what used to be the Zephyrian capital city, eating buildings and turning them into more of itself. Its black metal skin rippled and changed as it absorbed everything. Around it, Staff Sergeant Kate Williams looked at the monster through her binoculars and grinned. Boys and girls, we get to hunt the big one today. Her squad was hiding behind the remains of a crystal tower about a mile from the creature. The Zephyrian soldiers with them were shaking with fear. To them, attacking something that big was suicide. Sergeant Williams, said Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez. The alien commander says this creature has eaten their strongest weapons. Nothing they have can hurt it anymore. Kate lowered her binoculars. Good thing we're not using their weapons then. Danny, what do you see when you look at that thing? Danny studied the massive creature for a moment. Never been hunted before exactly. It's big, it's slow, and it thinks it's safe because nothing has ever really hurt it. Know what we call animals like that back on Earth? Dinosaurs? Suggested Corporal Mike Carter. And what happened to the dinosaurs? Kate asked. They went extinct, Mike said with a smile, the Zephyrian officer with them. A crystal being named Kethra flickered with confusion. I do not understand. How can you be so calm when facing such a powerful enemy? Kate checked her equipment one more time. Because on our world, big predators eat little predators all the time. The trick is not to be bigger. The trick is to be smarter. She activated her radio. Command, this is Ground Team Alpha. We're starting our approach on the primary target. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the speaker. Copy that, Sergeant. Remember, you're not trying to kill it quickly, you're trying to teach it fear. Kate's team moved out in a pattern that would have been familiar to any human hunter from the last 10,000 years. They spread out in a wide circle around the creature, each person taking a different route, but all heading toward the same target. The creature noticed them when they were about half a mile away. It turned its massive head toward the nearest human and opened a mouth full of metal teeth. A stream of acid shot out, burning everything in a straight line toward the soldier. But the soldier wasn't there anymore. Corporal Janet Hayes had seen the attack coming and rolled behind a chunk of broken building. The acid hit empty ground. First rule of hunting dangerous animals, Kate said into her radio. Don't be where they think you are. The creature tried again, firing acid at another soldier. Again, it hit nothing but empty space. Humans had been dodging dangerous animals for millions of years. This was just another Tuesday for them. But while the creature was focused on the soldiers it could see, it wasn't paying attention to the ones it couldn't see. Danny Rodriguez had crawled through the rubble until he was directly underneath the monster. Package delivered, he whispered into his radio. The explosion wasn't big enough to kill the creature, but it was big enough to hurt it. The monster roared and stumbled, green blood dripping from wounds on its belly. It looked around wildly, trying to find what had attacked it. Phase 2, Kate announced. Now the real hunt began. Kate's team started attacking from all directions at once. They used weapons the creature had never seen before, fired from angles it couldn't predict, using tactics that made no sense to its alien mind. When the creature adapted to their bullets, they switched to fire. When it adapted to fire, they used explosives. When it adapted to explosives, they used electricity. Every time it figured out how to defend against one attack, they were already moving to the next. It's getting frustrated, observed Mike Carter. As the creature thrashed around trying to hit enemies that kept disappearing, look how it's moving. It's angry, Kate said. Angry animals make mistakes. The creature's next mistake was trying to charge at what it thought was the largest group of humans. But the group was actually just reflections from mirrors that Danny had set up in the ruins. The creature ran full speed into a pile of broken concrete and metal beams. While it was stuck, Kate's team hit it with everything they had. Rockets, grenades, and bullets all struck the creature at once. Its adaptive armor couldn't handle so many different attacks happening at the same time. But the real surprise came when the creature tried its oldest trick. It sent out a signal calling for help from other Void Swarm creatures in the area. Instead of running away like every other species had done, the humans smiled. Reinforcements incoming, Danny reported. 3 smaller creatures heading our way. Perfect, Kate said. The Zephyrian soldiers couldn't believe what they were hearing. You want to fight more of them? At the same time? Kethra asked. Lady, where we come from, if you see a pack of wolves, you don't run from the pack. You kill the pack, Kate explained. Because if you don't, they'll just follow you home. The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, 4 Void Swarm creatures were dead, and the human team had used only half their ammunition. In space, the space battle was going just as well. Commander Rick Hayes was leading a squadron of human ships against a group of Void Swarm bioships. The alien vessels were trying to use their usual tactics, but human pilots had different ideas. Remember, Hayes said over the radio, these things have never fought anything that enjoys combat. They expect us to run when we take damage. Let's disappoint them. The human ships attacked in ways that seemed completely insane to the Void Swarm. They would fly straight at enemy vessels, taking heavy damage just to deliver a single perfect shot. They would ram their ships into the enemy, trading their own hull integrity for maximum damage to the target. Human ship, you are badly damaged, Veltar said over the communication channel. You should retreat and repair, Negative replied. Captain Lisa Burton from her smoking bridge. We can still fight, so we're still fighting. That's how we do things. Her ship, the Horizon's Edge, had lost half its armor and was leaking air from 3 different holes. But its weapons still worked, and its engines could still push it forward. So Lisa kept fighting. The Void Swarm had never encountered anything like this. In every other battle, damaged ships would retreat to safety. But human ships kept fighting until they literally couldn't move anymore. Some human pilots had ejected from their destroyed ships and were still shooting at the enemy with hand weapons. They fight like they have nothing to lose, observed Veltar said. No, Veltar corrected. They fight like they have everything to gain. There is a difference. Dr. Emma Collins was watching the battle from the science station. She was taking notes on how the Void Swarm creatures behaved under pressure from human tactics. Admiral Morrison, she said, I'm seeing some interesting patterns in their retreat behavior. Jake looked at her data. What kind of patterns? They're not actually retreating randomly. They're falling back to specific positions. I think they're regrouping for a coordinated counterattack. How long do we have? Emma checked her calculations. Maybe 6 hours before they come back with everything they have. Jake nodded. He had expected this. The Void Swarm was smart, and smart enemies always had backup plans. But humans had been dealing with smart predators for a very long time. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, he announced. Phase 1 is complete. The enemy now knows we can hurt them. Phase 2 begins now. What's Phase 2, sir? Asked Commander Hayes. We teach them that hurting them was just practice. Now we're going to show them what Deathworlders do when we get serious. The human fleet began to regroup, but not in the way the Void Swarm expected. Instead of forming defensive positions, they spread out across the entire star system. Instead of protecting their damaged ships, they put them in the most dangerous positions, Sir Lisa said from her damaged bridge. The Zephyrians are asking why we're putting our weakest ships on the front lines. Jake smiled. It was the same smile a wolf might give before attacking a deer. Tell them it's because wounded predators are the most dangerous kind. On the planet below, Kate Williams was setting up her next attack. The main Void Swarm force was still out there, and they would be back soon. But now she had something she hadn't had before: Zephyrian soldiers who were starting to think like hunters. The key, she explained to a group of crystal warriors, is not to fight fair. Fair fights are for sports. This is survival. One of the Zephyrians, a young soldier named Vexney, held up a human grenade. This weapon is so simple, just an explosive. In a metal shell. Why is it so effective? Because simple things work, Kate said. Complex weapons can break or be adapted to, but it's hard to adapt to a big explosion. She looked up at the stars where the human fleet was waiting. Your people spent thousands of years building perfect energy weapons and careful battle strategies. That's good. But sometimes you need someone who learned to fight by throwing rocks at big scary animals. The Zephyrians were beginning to understand. Their weapons were precise and efficient, but human weapons were brutal and unpredictable. Their tactics were careful and logical, but human tactics were chaotic and aggressive. Together, they might actually have a chance. Sergeant Williams, came Admiral Morrison's voice over the radio. Long-range sensors show the main Void Swarm force approaching. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in front of a room full of alien commanders. The Zephyrians looked like living crystals, tall and thin with light glowing inside their bodies. But right now, that light was dim with exhaustion and fear. We have bought. You time, said Commander Veltar, his crystal form flickering weakly. But the main Void Swarm force will arrive in 2 days. We'll have adapted to your tactics by then. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the enemy fleet approaching. It was massive. Hundreds of bioships, each the size of a city. Many times have you fought them before? 17 major battles across 12 systems, replied another Zephyrian officer. We have won only 3. Dr. Emma Collins was studying the alien battle records on her tablet. I see the problem. You fight the same way every time. Defensive formations, energy weapons, retreat when damaged. That is how civilized beings conduct warfare, Veltar said, sounding confused. Major Tony Adams, who had been quiet until now, laughed. Ma'am, with respect, there's nothing civilized about war. War is about killing the other guy before he kills you. The Zephyrians looked uncomfortable. Tony was a big man with scars on his face and hands that spoke of many battles. As to the crystal aliens, he looked like something from their worst nightmares. Your people think of war as a game with rules, Tony continued. We think of it as hunting. And the first rule of hunting is that there are no rules. Jake activated the room's main display. Let me show you something. Computer, bring up the Battle of Stalingrad. The screen filled with images from an ancient Earth battle. Human soldiers fighting in destroyed buildings using whatever weapons they could find, never giving up even when surrounded and outnumbered. This battle lasted 6 months, Jake explained. The attacking army had better weapons, more soldiers, and complete control of the air. They should have won easily. But they did not, asked Veltar. They lost over 1 million soldiers and eventually retreated. Know why? Because humans don't fight to win battles. We fight to destroy enemies. Captain Lisa Burton pulled up another File. Show them the data from yesterday's fight. The screen changed to show statistics from the battle with the Void Swarm. The Zephyrians studied the numbers with growing amazement. You lost 60% of your ships, one alien officer observed. How is this a victory? Because we destroyed 100% of theirs, Lisa replied. We don't care about our losses if we completely eliminate the threat. Commander Rick Hayes stepped forward. That's the difference between prey thinking and predator thinking. Prey animals fight to survive. Predators fight to kill. Emma was working with the translation computer, trying to explain human concepts to alien minds. Commander Veltar, when your people are attacked, what is your first instinct? To protect our civilians and retreat to a safe position. When humans are attacked, our first instinct is to hunt down whoever attacked us and make sure they can never do it again. The room was quiet for a moment. Then a younger Zephyrian officer, Lieutenant Kextra, spoke up. But how do you coordinate such aggressive tactics? Surely individual aggression leads to chaos. Tony smiled. Kid, let me tell you about something we call organized chaos. Danny, get over here. Corporal Danny Rodriguez entered the room. He was carrying a football, which made the Zephyrians even more confused. This is a game from our world, Tony explained. 11 players on each side, trying to carry this ball to the other end of a field. Simple, right? It sounds straightforward, Veltar agreed. Watch this. Ah! Tony threw the ball to Danny, who caught it and immediately started running. Ah! The Zephyrians watched as other human soldiers in the room began moving to block imaginary opponents and create paths for Danny to run through. Now here's the interesting part, Tony said as Danny reached the other side of the room. We never told anyone what to do. No central command, no detailed plan. But everyone knew their job. Lieutenant Kextra leaned forward. How is this possible? Because we've been practicing teamwork since we were children, Danny explained. Every human learns how to work with a group while still thinking for themselves. Emma pulled up more files. This is the key to human military success. We train every soldier to be both a leader and a follower. When the plan breaks down, everyone can adapt on their own. But adaptation requires practice, Veltar said. How do you practice for unknown situations? Jake smiled. We fight each other. The Zephyrians looked shocked. You fight your own species? All the time? Sports, games, military exercises even? Arguments. We compete with each other constantly, so when we face a real enemy, we know every trick in the book. Lisa brought up videos of human military training. The aliens watched as human soldiers practiced fighting in forests, deserts, cities, underwater, and even in zero gravity. We prepare for every possible battle, she explained, because on a death world, if you're not ready for something, it will kill you. Major Amy Fisher, who commanded the pilot training program, stepped forward. Want to see something really interesting? Kextra, you're a pilot, right? Yes, I command a squadron of energy fighters. How do you attack an enemy formation? We approach in tight formation, focus fire on the strongest target, then retreat to regroup. Amy nodded. Sensible. Safe. Boring. Want to learn how humans do it? She activated a simulation on the room's display. It showed human fighters approaching an enemy fleet in what looked like complete disorder. Call this controlled chaos, Amy explained. Each pilot picks his own target, chooses his own approach, and decides his own tactics. But everyone is working toward the same goal. The simulation showed human ships attacking from dozens of different angles at once. Some ships rammed the enemy, others fired missiles, still others used their engines as weapons by flying too close. It looks like madness, Veltar observed. That's the point. The enemy can't predict what we're going to do because we don't follow a plan. We follow an idea. What idea? Kill everything that threatens us. Dr. Collins was taking notes on Zephyrian psychology. Your people are highly intelligent, but you think in very organized ways. You like plans and structures and logical sequences. This is correct. The Void Swarm is intelligent too. That's why they can adapt to your tactics so quickly. They understand logical thinking. Jake took over the explanation. But they don't understand illogical thinking. They can't adapt to chaos because chaos has no pattern to learn. Tony was setting up a demonstration. "Kexra, I want you to try to hit me with this training laser." The young Zephyrian took the weapon uncertainly. "I do not understand." "Point it at me and fire. I'm going to try to avoid getting hit." Kexra aimed carefully and fired. Tony moved to the right, easily avoiding the beam. The alien aimed again, leading his target this time, and fired again. Tony ducked, rolled, and came up in a completely different position.
Nope.
"You move without pattern," Kexra said, frustrated after missing several more shots. "Exactly. Not following a plan, I'm just reacting to you. Every time you aim, I do something different." Emma was documenting everything. "This is what we need to teach your pilots and soldiers. How to fight without thinking, how to react without planning." "But that sounds dangerous," Veltar said. "What if they make mistakes?" "They will make mistakes," Jake admitted. "But they'll also do things the enemy never expects. And in war, surprise is worth more than perfection." Over the next 18 hours, humans began training Zephyrian soldiers in what they called Deathworld tactics. It was like trying to teach crystal beings to think like wolves. Staff Sergeant Kate Williams worked with ground troops, showing them how to use terrain and cover the way humans did. "Stop thinking about protecting yourself," she told a group of crystal warriors. "Start thinking about hurting the enemy." Commander Hayes trained pilots in what he called aggressive maneuvering. The Zephyrian ships were fast and precise, but their pilots had never learned to use their ships as weapons. "Your ship isn't just a platform for your guns," he explained. "It's a 200-ton missile that you happen to be riding inside." The most difficult lesson was psychological. Zephyrians had evolved as prey animals. Every instinct told them to run from danger, to protect themselves, to survive at any cost. "We're asking you to ignore 1,000,000 years of evolution," Emma explained to a group of officers. "It won't be easy." But some of the younger Zephyrians were starting to understand. Lieutenant Kexra was practicing human-style combat maneuvers with his fighter squadron. Instead of flying in perfect formation, they were learning to move like a school of fish being chased by sharks. "It feels wrong," he admitted to Amy Fisher. "Every instinct says this is dangerous." "It is dangerous," Amy agreed. "But it's more dangerous to the enemy than it is to you. So that's what makes it work." Meanwhile, human engineers were working with Zephyrian technicians to modify alien weapons. The crystal beings had amazing energy technology, but they had never thought to use it aggressively. "You built this beam to cut through metal?" observed Lieutenant Ben Parker, studying a Zephyrian mining tool. "With a few modifications, it could cut through void swarm armor." "But that would be using industrial equipment as a weapon," the Zephyrian engineer protested. "Lady on Earth, anything can be a weapon if you're creative enough."
At the time the
Enemy fleet arrived. The Zephyrian forces had been transformed. The void swarm's main fleet came out of deep space like a plague of metal locusts. There were over 300 bioships, each one the size of a human city. They moved in perfect formation, their black holes rippling with adaptive armor that had learned to defend against every weapon the galaxy had ever used. Admiral Jake Morrison watched them approach on his tactical display. The enemy fleet was 10 times larger than the combined human and Zephyrian forces. By all logical calculations, this should be a massacre. "Sir," Captain Lisa Burton reported from her position, "the enemy is maintaining standard approach formation. They expect us to form defensive lines around the planet." Jake smiled. "Then let's disappoint them. All ships, initiate Operation Wolfpack, break formation, and go hunting." What happened next would have looked like complete chaos to any military observer from a civilized species. The human and Zephyrian ships scattered in all directions, abandoning any pretense of organized battle lines. Lieutenant Kexra, flying his modified Zephyrian fighter alongside human pilot Captain Nick Sullivan, felt his crystal body vibrate with fear. Everything he had learned about proper tactics said this was suicide. "Relax, Crystal Boy," Nick's voice came through the radio. "Trust the chaos. Remember what Major Fisher taught you." Kexra took a deep breath of the methane gas his species needed to live. Controlled chaos. "Pick a target. Cause maximum damage. Don't worry about the plan. Now you're getting it." The first surprise came when the human ships started using the asteroid belt as weapons. For the past week, human engineers had been attaching rocket engines to space rocks. Now those rocks were flying at 20% of light, speed directly into the void swarm formation. The bioships tried to adapt their armor to kinetic impacts, but there were hundreds of asteroids coming from different directions. Some were solid rock, others were filled with explosives, and still others were just chunks of ice that would flash into steam when they hit. How are they controlling so many projectiles at once? The void swarm hive mind wondered through its bioelectric network that the answer was simple. They weren't controlling them. Each asteroid was following a different trajectory, calculated by a different human engineer. There was no central plan for the hive mind to figure out, but the real battle began when the ships made contact. Commander Rick Hayes led the first attack. Wave, diving straight into the center of the enemy formation with a mixed squadron of human and Zephyrian vessels. Remember, he broadcasts to his pilots, "We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make it as unfair as possible." The Void Swarm bioships opened fire with weapons that could adapt to any defense. But the human ships weren't trying to defend themselves. They were trying to get close enough to use weapons the enemy had never seen before. Sergeant Major Linda Hayes, Rick's sister, was leading a boarding party aboard one of the smaller human ships. As her vessel rammed into the side of a bioship, she was already suiting up for the most dangerous job in space combat, boarding teams. "Remember your training?" she announced to her mixed squad of humans and Zephyrians. "These things think like a hive. They don't expect individual initiative." The bioship's interior was like the inside of a living creature. Walls that breathed, floors that pulsed with alien heartbeats, and a smell like rotting metal. The Zephyrian soldiers with Linda were terrified, but they followed her deeper into the ship. Contact Front called Corporal Dave Miller as they encountered their first Void Swarm defender. It was a smaller version of the creatures they had fought on the planet, about the size of a human but made of the same adaptive metal. The creature fired an energy beam at Dave, but he wasn't there anymore. Human soldiers had learned to keep moving, never staying in one place long enough to become an easy target. While the creature was tracking Dave, Linda hit it from the side with a weapon that made the Zephyrians gasp in shock. It was a chainsaw, modified for use in space combat. "You brought a cutting tool to a space battle?" asked Vexney, one of the Crystal Warriors. "Honey, when you come from a death world, everything is a weapon if you use it right," Linda replied. Cutting through the creature's adaptive armor like it was paper. The creature tried to adapt to the chainsaw, but there was nothing to adapt to. It was just a spinning metal blade, powered by a small engine. Simple, crude, and completely effective. Meanwhile, in the main space battle, things were getting interesting. The Void Swarm was discovering that fighting humans was like trying to catch smoke with their bare hands. Captain Lisa Burton's ship, the Horizon's Edge, had lost its main weapons in the first exchange of fire. Instead of retreating, she rammed her ship into an enemy vessel, using her engines as weapons. "This is insane," observed Commander Veltar, watching from his command ship. "Is destroying her own vessel to damage the enemy. She's trading something she was going to lose anyway for maximum damage to the target," Dr. Emma Collins explained. "It's a predator's bargain." The Void Swarm hive mind was becoming confused. In every previous battle, damaged ships had retreated to repair and regroup. But human ships kept fighting until they literally exploded. Some human pilots had ejected from their destroyed vessels and were continuing to attack with hand weapons. Captain Nick Sullivan found himself fighting alongside Kexra when both their ships were damaged in the same attack. Instead of running, they coordinated their remaining weapons for a joint strike. "I am scared," Kexra admitted, as they lined up for their attack run. "Good," Nick replied. "Scared keeps you alive, but angry keeps you fighting. I do not understand the difference. Scared makes you careful. Angry makes you dangerous. We need both." Their attack succeeded, destroying a bioship that was 3 times the size of both their vessels combined. But more importantly, other Zephyrian pilots saw what had happened and began copying the tactic. The turning point came when Sergeant Major Linda Hayes, reached the command center of the bioship. She was boarding. The heart of the vessel was a massive biological computer, pulsing with the shared thoughts of the void swarm hive mind. "So this is how you think?" Linda said, studying the alien technology. Her squad had fought through the entire ship to reach this point, leaving a trail of destroyed defenders behind them. The hive mind tried to communicate with her through bioelectric pulses. "You are apex predators, yet you protect prey species. This is illogical." Linda planted her explosive charges around the biocomputer. "Maybe that's what you don't understand about us. We don't hunt because we're hungry. We hunt because something needs to be stopped. But you sacrifice yourselves for species that cannot benefit you." "Why?" Linda armed the explosives and smiled. "Because that's what makes us human. We choose what to protect and what to destroy." The explosion that followed did more than just destroy one bioship. It severed the psychic links that connected this part of the void swarm to the main hive mind. Across the battlefield, bioships began acting independently, without coordination. And independent bioships were no match for human tactics. "All units, the enemy has lost formation," Jake announced from his command ship. "Time to finish this. Show them what wolves do to scattered sheep." The final phase of the battle lasted less than an hour. Without their hive mind coordination, the void swarm creatures fought like the individual animals they were underneath. But humans had been hunting individual animals for millions of years. When it was over, the space around the Zephyrian homeworld was filled with the wreckage of bioships. Some were still twitching, their biological parts trying to repair damage that couldn't be fixed. Jake stood on his bridge, looking out at the battlefield. His fleet had taken heavy casualties. Half the human ships were destroyed or badly damaged. But the enemy was completely eliminated. Admiral Morrison Veltar's voice came through the communication system. "We owe you a debt that spans the stars." "You don't owe us anything," Jake replied. "But if you want to repay something, teach other species what you learned here." "What did we learn?" Dr. Emma Collins answered from her station where she was. "Helping coordinate rescue operations. You learn that prey species can become predators if they choose to. And you learn that predators don't just hunt for themselves." Over the next few days, as the combined fleets rescued survivors and counted their losses, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The void swarm, which had seemed unstoppable, had been completely destroyed by a joint force of Deathworlders and their allies. Other species began sending messages to the Zephyrian system. Some wanted to learn human tactics. Others wanted to hire human mercenaries. Still others just wanted to know if the stories were true. The galaxy is going to be different. Now, Emma observed as she compiled her reports on the battle. Jake nodded, watching the stars through his bridge windows. "Good. Maybe now they'll understand that Deathworlders aren't monsters. We're just the species you call when the real monsters show up." Staff Sergeant Kate Williams, who had survived the ground battles, was already training a new group of Zephyrian soldiers. They were learning human tactics, but more importantly, they were learning to think like hunters instead of prey. The key, she explained to her crystal students, is not to become us. It's to become the best version of yourselves. We just showed you one way to be strong.